folks. Welcome to Politics Done Right. My name is Egberto Willies, your host, and I'm so kindly in debt to the geniuses in the studio who were able to cover as we tried to get these strings and cans connected throughout the city of Houston. Anyway, good morning, Houston. Good morning, Harris County. Good morning to the great state of Texas. And of course, good morning to the United States of America. Good morning to every nook and cranny where our signal permeates: Northeast, Southeast Texas, Northwest, Southwest Louisiana, and of course, the rest of the world via the magic of the internet. We are going to have a great show for you today. We have three subjects from three articles that really tickled me yesterday to say we've got to speak about these things. Of course, your voice is first. So if you decide that you want to get the certain values in first, we'll do that, because of course you can always go to the newsletter for what we intended to discuss at politicsandright.com/newsletter. That's politicsandright.com/newsletter. Good morning to the geniuses in the studio. And again, one more time, thank you so kindly as we got all those strings and knots connected to make sure we could get right back to you.
Must have been some birds on the line outside of your window there. I mean, if the string gets a bird on it, well, it just soaks up all the audio, and the bird begins to talk like Egberto. So that should be very interesting. As I was saying, I had a job out of town to do yesterday, and I had to take a flight to Midland, and I cannot believe how they packed those people into the airplanes. Yeah, it's crazy. It's ridiculous. You know, when they deregulated the airline industry, unfortunately, they started doing this sort of thing. Oh, well, it's perfectly safe. I mean, we can stack people on top of people. It's perfectly safe. I didn't feel real safe being crunched in like that. I felt like a sardine in a can. So,
was it a Southwest flight?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah. They're all bad now.
Yeah, I mean, deregulation is not the answer. Re-regulation is the answer. Okay, so re-regulation will go a little too far, but it's for your own good. Honestly, I mean, you take that middle seat out of those things and give some people some room to move around in. Anyway, that's my rant for this morning.
And you know what? Believe it or not, it fits into something that I want to talk about: newspapers, etc. As far as what happens when money takes over everything. But anyhow,
all right,
Brother Jack,
turn it over to you. And Jack, whoa, Jack, okay, go ahead.
Yeah, well, I read something while you were doing. You want me to read it again, or?
Yeah, please.
Okay,
please.
all right. It's a wish for humankind. Okay, inside me spiritually hopes humankind can become kind humans and find a more altruistic principle to govern society with besides unfettered capitalism and profit. Seems like unfettered capitalism destroys something to create nothing sustainable. Profit for profit's sake sells us all into slavery.
You nailed it. And when we talk about antiseptic slavery and where we are today, that is exactly what I mean, Jack. That's exactly what I mean. And I like that thing about humankind needs to be kind to humans. And what we've learned in this rat race here is that somehow to survive this rugged individualism that a lot of these business folks who aren't rugged individualists themselves, that they put on us, it actually hurts us. I mean, the thing is, we all want to work hard for our families. We all do. But when we get into the point that they pit us against each other because they
like
know
hamsters
we have
on a
to work
wheel.
hard. There you go. Exactly. And the title of the show today, let me go ahead and pull that up, because believe it or not, I can tie the newspaper story here directly to Howard's flight on that Southwest plane to Midland yesterday that was packed like sardines, etc. And so, anyway, the title of the show is Media Financial Woes Are a Danger to Democracy. And a billionaire says retirement age is too low. You know, um, we need to increase that retirement age, because we want people to pay into Social Security all their life, but we don't want them to get too many years. If they get 2, 3, 4 years, hey, that's too damn much. We need them to die so that Social Security can survive. And if certain sections of our society, they actually benefit very little from their Social Security. They reach 67, and by 68, 69, 70, they're dead. Ha! What a profit. What a profit for Social Security, right? Look, we need a revamp in this entire system. We need a revamp in the entire system. But there's a story that really got to me, and by the way, folks, the telephone number is 713-526-5738. Again, that number is 713-526-5738. And please don't wait till the end of the show. Please call early on so that we can give you the ample time, and I don't have to be rushing you and tell you, okay, you got 30 seconds or 45 seconds or whatever. That's been my fault for not calling for calls earlier on. So I'm saying when the show starts, you can always call in to the show for us to get business done. Anyhow, the title of the show, this story that kind of tickled me and made me really want to talk to you about it is called The Media Industry's Financial Problems Are Bad News for Democracy. And it starts this way. The Miami Herald is one of America's top newspapers, winner of a whopping 24 Pulitzer Prizes, renowned in its heyday for its extensive coverage of Latin America, and publisher of the epic investigative reporting that took down late financier and sex fiend Jeffrey Epstein. So yeah, good reporting at the Miami Herald did that. Checking it out Monday, this is the author. I read the latest on the raids on hip hop star Diddy's Miami Beach mansion, a report from Haiti by its longtime award-winning correspondent. And then on the fourth click, I hit the paywall. For those who don't know what a paywall is, if you decide to read let's say the New York Times or the Washington Post or whatever online, after you've read about 1 or 2 or 3 articles, it comes up and say, hey, to continue reading, you have to pay us some money. All right. First of all, let me let you know that the reporters at the New York Times and all these other newspapers, they do work. They need to be paid. So some mechanism has to be there to pay for these people's salaries. So I can understand why there is a paywall. Personally, let me just say, I write 5 to 8 stories a day on my blog, and I experimented with paywalls as well as a form of, well, this is all that I do, activism, informing people, etc. I experimented with a paywall, and then I remembered, I don't remember which program I was doing, which one of my politics and right, whether it was at KPFT or the one that I do at 3 o'clock. This person said, wow, I can't, I'm sorry, Egbert, I can't afford to pay to read your website. I can't. And then, it got to me that let me first back up. There was a time when all our websites, in fact, when I left my software company altogether, the website and everything was 100% free, right? Whatever reporting we did, 100% free. And the reason why it was that way is that Google and Facebook and all these other platforms wanted content. So they want people like myself and others writing content. And for writing content, they would put advertising on your website. In other words, they will give you a little nook to put on your website so that your website would be a portal to everybody who reads your article. So it was sort of a win-win situation that I could survive writing articles for free, right? And doing whatever I do for free. And at the same time, people that who want to read the stuff that I write could get it, no problems, no questions asked. In one day, un día, Google and Facebook and these other platforms changed what that magical thing you hear called the algorithm. And what that algorithm change meant was that I lost 90%, and I mean instantly from day zero to day one, I lost 90% of my income. I still had to eat. I still had to do all the things that we normally do with a job. But let me just say, before I gave up my software company, I said we reduce expenses and everything by a whole bunch so that these ads on my website would be enough to take care of the bills, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I want you to think about what happens when that business plan is usurped by these major corporations by just changing overnight and saying, you know what, we can make more money if we reserve all these ads going forward for the big companies who are able to pay us more or who are giving us a stipend to get their stories out, etc. So that's what happened at all these things. The traffic disappeared from Facebook, from Google, etc. And that is when those of us that are independent media, had to start experimenting with things like paywalls, etc. You hadn't seen the New York Times and the Washington Post and all these guys quite doing that as much yet. They had all the ads. They had all the big features, including there's a feature in Facebook where it carried New York Times articles, and New York Times could make a killing doing all these things, etc. Right? But like we always explain here, the capitalist model of having to constantly grow, not stay steady. In other words, if on steady state, if you have the average American citizen, they are steady state, right? Every year you make a certain amount of money, and sometimes your wages will go up relative to inflation. For decades, we had either negative or very little or no inflation. All right. For a long time, we had that, which means salaries and everything simply went up a little bit by that little cost of inflation. But investors in the capitalist class, they are generally promised that they make at least 7% or more growth on their investments. I don't want to mix too many things up here, but remember we're talking about what is happening in the news media. But I'm trying to explain that all of this is interconnected. The flight that Howard took, where he was packed like a sardine, the cost that these newspapers having to pay, you having to pay through a paywall to get access, the small independent media like myself who at times was actually contemplating or thinking that the only model option was to charge folks who are coming to the site because just advertising wasn't enough anymore, or the corporations took this away from you, right? So that is how it came to be that with regards to my own site, that it went from a site that was subsidized by having advertising and traffic from Google and Facebook or whatever. They, as the one controlling how people get to you often, that had to stop, and we had to change model. And when this woman said, I want to read your stuff, I just can't afford it. And again, it was a small amount. We were hoping to get a small amount from a lot of people, but some people, they are at the edge. And these are things when you're connected with the public very tightly, you get to understand as you're dealing with people from all over the country and people that you see are in dire straits, you learn this about people that you didn't quite know, right? So, I'm sitting down there feeling guilty as a dog because I'm saying, I have to pay for the website. I got to pay for all these things. I have to exist. I got to live. But this woman deserves to read as well. So my initial thing was, all right, I will just fix it that you can read the thing. I went ahead and I paid it myself because again, it was, I don't know, $3, $4 or something. I paid it myself so that she could read it. But I mean, for all the people, then I started thinking, for all the people that have to read this stuff, I can't afford to do that because I need folks who can to do it, right? So I took the paywall down and went to what's called a patron model, where people would say, I have enough, I can actually subsidize, or we also use some other YouTube subscription models where you can do it. But at the same time, I made sure that it was really free to everybody, and only those who say, well, you know what, I understand that you guys need to keep doing this. I will go ahead and support you. And it's, believe it or not, thinking about it, it's the same model that KPFT uses, right? In other words, KPFT, its news goes all over the airwaves, and we say, look, for those of you who can afford to support this independent media, please, please support it so that everybody can be informed with truth information, not only those who can afford. I'm going to tie that to the plane with Howard a little bit after the article, but it does have to do with capitalism and growth. Capitalism and growth above and beyond inflation, growth above and beyond everybody else's growth. So the Miami Chronicle or the Miami Herald had to put up a paywall as well. So this stuff isn't a knock on the Miami Herald. I understand. Miami Herald has great reporters going around Latin America, the Caribbean, and elsewhere reporting the news so that we can all be informed. But check this out now. You can still read the Miami Chronicle 100% free. The Chronicle's website is topped by a Gothic-style header that looks borrowed from the Herald's fonts. This website looks just like the Miami Herald, and it's called the Chronicle, right? The Miami Chronicle. Great name. A tagline reading, "The Florida news since 1937 seems to have vanished since the New York Times reported the site actually didn't exist before late this February." Just came to a pass in February. The Chronicle's headline linked to stories from the BBC and other sources. Whenever you see that, you know what's going on. Their content is free, right? They're using the BBC and all these other things to link stories there. There's no about page. You have to read the Times to know that. According to researchers and government officials, the Chronicle and at least 4 sister sites like the New York News Daily, as opposed to the Daily News or DC Weekly, are part of a Russia-backed disinformation network. The paper called the new sites a technological leap forward in the Vladimir Putin regime's goal of fooling U.S. voters with fears that more deceptive fake news will appear on these pages as the November election gets closer. So, what are we saying here? There are a lot of other newspaper-looking websites popping up with names that gives you the belief that they are legitimate. Let's say the New York, the Miami Chronicle start to sound like the Miami Herald when you're thinking in newspaper terms, but it is a Putin-funded newspaper, and you have to wonder, it's free. What are people going to read more? The Miami Herald? All the people that are looking up for stuff and can read it for free, they're going to get the Putin's paper. There's no about. I mean, in 1984, Whole Earth Catalog, a hippie guru Stuart Brand said famously, "Information wants to be free." The reality, 40 years later, is that for millions of internet readers, it's disinformation, articles that twist facts, offer toxic opinions, and increasingly include AI generated deepfake video, pictures, and audio that wants to be free. The truth? That's probably going to cost you. It's probably going to cost you. If you want to read the truth, it's gonna cost you. Going back to my own site, that's why I said we went with the volunteer model, that model that says we want everybody to have the option of getting news, whether they can afford to pay for it or not. And we have to depend on the educated reader that says, if I want to hear the truth, unbiased by the plutocrat, unbiased by Putin, unbiased by the corporatocracy, then I have to invest in the responsible sources. I have to invest in those sources that I trust that will give me valid data that I can corroborate from other sources giving me valid data. We are in very dangerous times, and it all starts with our economic model that's based solely on maximizing profits and growing day by day by day at a faster clip than the economy itself, growing day by day as our cause isn't for the little person or the person not working. Our cause is just for the few who control the strings of our economic system to make a huge profit. How are we going to solve these problems? You've probably heard that 2024 has been an annus horribilis for the American media. Even though we are only 12 weeks into the year, hardworking journalists, many of them young and disproportionately people of color, have been laid off or taken buyouts at news organizations such as the Los Angeles Times, Vice Media, Sports Illustrated, and The Messenger, which closed after just a year. It's happening. All these people that are embedded in the community that are reporting, that are working for these major rags, these major newspapers, these major websites, they're closing, they're leaving, they're reducing staff. But you still need your information. And guess what happens in a society? The gaps always get filled. It can get filled by the good or it can get filled by the evil. And as explained at the beginning of this story, so many papers are now purchased. I called out Putin, right? I went ahead and said, well, Putin owns these particular newspapers, which is true. We're talking about Putin agents owning these papers. But it's not only about Putin because, while Putin may be the bad guy in a lot of things, right? We have to realize as well that the plutocrats out there, they want to control your mind so that you will behave a certain way as well, so that they can remain making the orders of magnitudes of monies that they make on your backs. So they want to control papers. That's why even the Washington Post now is controlled by whom again? I think it's Jeff Bezos or one of the billionaires. And a newspaper in Baltimore, I can't remember the name of it, controlled by another billionaire. And he went to that. At least Bezos didn't quite tell these guys, you're going to report my way. They still has some autonomy that they're living with, and for that they're staying there. But the Baltimore, I think it was the Baltimore Sun, the guy came in and said, "You guys need to write more exciting stories. You guys need to make money. Think money first." We are approaching that point where if we don't, as individuals, take control of our media, make sure that the KPFTs of the world continue so that we can give this unadulterated information, which all of this happens behind the scenes unless you're told about it. All of this, there are many of you listening to me right now driving in your car or listening to me over the internet are listening to me in many places, if you are, I would love to hear from you, who hadn't a clue of what's really going on with our news media. Why is it that our local news doesn't cover the things that really affect us, but if it bleeds, it leads? If you see certain people getting shot down or certain people shooting, it makes the most important part of the news. In other words, if you turn on ABC, CBS, NBC's the 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock news, take a look at what's it's led with. Crime, somebody someplace getting shoot up, some big accident occurring. I ask you to pause a minute. Houston is a huge metropolitan area. There are things occurring all through this city. 4 million people. My country of birth, Panama, I think the population is about 3 million. The entire city of Houston has more people than my entire country. And if you take a look at, let's say, how many people get killed in the streets of Panama City or Colon compared to Houston, it's a lot. All right. Even though the crime rate, relatively speaking, in Panama is low, it's a lot higher than it is likely in Houston. Houston is a humongous metropolitan area. I don't want anybody murdered, killed. I don't want any accidents. I don't want any of that. But is it really news that one person in one place, sadly gets shot or whatever, and it leads the news and have people believing that our biggest problem in the city of Houston is crime? And when you think that the biggest problem in Houston right now is crime, it means that because of your own carnal fear, what you're going to want is you're going to want as much money placed into the police department and all these departments that take care of your safety, because your safety is at risk. How do you form that opinion, even as the crime rate is really fallen? Even our crime rate at its maximum rate here in Houston, your immediate risk of being a victim of crime, of any kind of violent crime, is near nil. It's almost zero. But if you watch the news every day, you are fearful to go out there because something may happen to you. But at the same time, the things that are really happening, that your water bill is going to go way up because we refuse to tax appropriately. We refuse to instead of investing in cops, investing in infrastructure. We refuse to do all the things to make Houston a better place. And by the way, if we invested in keeping a working society, crime in itself would go down as well, because we're investing where we need to invest, but we invest in cops. Right? And if you dare deviate from that, they call you a police defunder who is harming our society. Folks, that is what misinformation does. It makes you make decisions on bad data, and it ultimately hurts you. In the case of crime, it increases crime rates that we are investing so much in our police department and not into latchkey kids, and not into areas where people are working so hard that their kids are left unsupervised. Why not have programs that keep these kids supervised in such a manner that it helps? Folks, and this starts with the news, being ill-informed. And I'll tie it later on. Let me finish the article first. Look well and know that the big paywall papers in New York Times or Washington Post don't always live up to those standards, high-minded ideals, but they're the ones who for some time have broken the news. You get the gist of the article. I'm going to start taking calls. 713-526-5738. We have more subjects as well, but I want to take calls of this if people want to expand on this. 713-526-5738. Is there William on the line right now? Line 1. Come on in, William.
Howdy, Pilgrim. If I can change,
good morning, Pilgrim.
In honor of opening day, I'm going to throw a curveball. What do you think about that ship accident? Okay, they call it an accident. My trust meter has been down for so long, but thank you for this show. Vaya con Dios.
Thank you. Okay, what accident that you mentioned about, sir?
What's that?
You said, what do I think about an accident? Which accident?
In Baltimore.
Oh, the ship accident in Baltimore. Okay. We don't need.
I don't believe them.
I
don't
okay, let me just say
that was an accident.
Let me ask you why you don't believe it's an accident. I
don't know the whole process of leaving their port and all that stuff, but I don't know. It just didn't seem natural.
And let me just say this, William. I'm glad you called, and I'm glad you're showing that level of skepticism, which we should. I would say that I do believe it was an accident, and I'll explain why. But I want to tell you that our media system and our the reason that you are legitimate, you're legitimate. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
The reason you are legitimately feeling that doubt is because there is so much chaos in our media, disinformation, etc. And that looks so bad. Now, let me just tell you from an engineering standpoint, I can understand exactly what happened there, right? And when I saw the bridge collapse, the first thing I said is, my God, what bad engineering for having all these sectors so intertwined that neither one of them could stand on their own. The ship that size hitting a column, it did exactly what it would do. It would bring that thing down. And let me tell you all the bad parts of engineering that I looked into. That these stubs by the entry point weren't controlled by islands. There are ways that you set up islands, and in Houston you'll see it at our ship channel, etc. You have islands so that if the ship runs aground, it's going to be hitting the island, and the massive amount of dirt in that island will stop the ship before it does massive damage to that pole, and that's not what was done in that bridge in Baltimore. So when I saw that thing pancaking down, my only thought was, my God, even if you didn't put an island around the column, why did you have the two truss sections connected so that it actually caused the whole bridge collapse? As I see it, only two sections should have collapsed. Everything collapsed, and I could see why.
Like a domino effect.
Yeah, but again, I don't think there was anything.
It just didn't look natural.
Right. Based on how trusses work, and trusses work by using a lot less material that you have to use. You know, all those metals going in different sections. Trusses are very inexpensive. I shouldn't say inexpensive, but a very good way to use less material to build a bridge of that type, because you use a lot of beams and tension to build it. And that's what occurred there. And when certain parts fail, the whole damn thing fail. My contention is that every column should have been independent. Now, sitting on every column should be independent. It'll cost a little bit more money to do that. But hey, what can I say? You pay me once.
Can I tell you this much? I work with industrial fasteners. I'm a machinist, and we thread and all that kind of stuff. When something goes wrong, and wherever, Texas City, or our first thought is, tell me that wasn't my part that caused some.
Yes, I know.
Oh my goodness, that's scary.
I know.
I couldn't imagine. But thank you. You're full of knowledge, and the program is too short. Make it 2 hours. Thank you very much.
Thank you, my brother. I appreciate it. By the way, just to let you know that we do a program on the internet called Politics Done Right at 3 o'clock. So we do it twice a day, and we share information between programs. So some of the things that I play at my 3 o'clock show, I play here, and some of when I have some great info from here, I put it on the other. But thank you so kindly for the kind words, William. Have a wonderful day, sir. All right, folks. That was William, and you cannot. I understand why William is skeptical. I really honestly understand why William is skeptical, especially in these times. Now, look, I could be wrong. There could be something nefarious. I don't think so this time. I don't think this is something nefarious based on how things look. But I think this one is a real accident. So let's go to Melissa, and we'll put Melissa on for me. Let's see. There you go. Melissa, how are you doing, my dear?
Good morning. Good morning, Houston. Good morning, Egberto. Good morning, panel. I know what you're doing, Egberto. You're trying to not, stir up the waters, and you don't want us, putting our skepticism out there. But it's kind of like the reverse, right? If we don't address our fears, then it's kind of like that guy that told us to drink the juice, the Kool-Aid, and they all drunk it.
Right.
Everybody's looking at each other like, yo, we shouldn't drink it, right? So,
Yes.
It's kind of like us we're not trying to scare people, but there's legitimate concerns. And I also agree with the last caller, like, how does a ship that's supposed to be docked come out of its dock, go the wrong way, and hit something? How do you turn it at a 360? Who's in the ship in the first? Who's controlling this thing? And if nobody's controlling this thing, why could it uproot itself from the dock, back itself out, and go the wrong way? Explain that.
Okay. Let me just say what actually happened, and that is what concerns me a lot about the media not getting it right. What actually happened is the following, right? When ships are docked, and these container ships are huge, they're massive, and you can't, once it starts moving, you can't stop it. Even if it's moving at 1 mile an hour, Melissa, the amount of this thing called momentum that it's moving with, it can take out a bridge. So let me just say what happened according to reputable sources now, what supposedly happened. The tugboats helped that big ship. That big ship was leaving the United States to go to Singapore. A big tugboat helped that ship get into the fairway. All these ship channels that go inland, they've dredged a deep hole so that even though they have a big draft, meaning that they're deep, and it's so that it doesn't touch bottom, there's a particular area that they dredge so these ships can get into that area. All these ships get when they come into American ports, they get an American pilot to get on that ship. And until that ship gets to open waters, it is being driven by an American pilot. So when that ship left Baltimore's port, 2 tugboats got it into the channel where it's deep, into the deep lane. And on its own power, it was expected that it continued straight through that channel that goes directly under that long bridge. When it got a few yards from the bridge, if you take a look at the pictures, I was watching it at midnight when the lights on the ship went out. It lost the generators on the ship that controls everything lost power. And when that lost power, you lose steering. That is a rudder at the back of the ship that makes it move left or right. And that rudder stayed in whatever direction it was in when it lost power. And that would have taken that thing, it has to make a slight turn right, I think is what they said, to get under the bridge. When it was about to, they lost power, the American captain on that ship radioed and said, "Hey, alert, we lost power, we lost steering." And that's when they shut down the bridge, where we didn't have a whole lot of debts. And then that ship hit that column. the column on the bridge. If you hit a column if you're going down I-10 or whatever, there are certain bridges that are not built the best right now. If you hit that column under I-10, that bridge is coming down. If a regular truck, not car, but truck, hit that column, that bridge is going. I see a lot of them as we drive through Houston, and that is what happened in again. I don't have that. I don't have any reason right now to say what would have happened. What the advantage was of taking the bridge out or anything like that. So I'm saying it's plausible, and I think it's likely what happened, that this was genuinely an accident. I'm not saying that all things are, but I'm saying I think I think this one is an accident. Another thing is it also shows something that I like to say is more important, and that is how poorly our infrastructure is built. All right. There should have been a lot of protection on that bridge that wasn't there for the columns that I'm pretty. Go ahead. You want to say something, Melissa?
I was going to go and let you finish talking. But God forbid anything happen to where they need to leave, because it looks like a setup to me. Like everybody's stranded.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I hear you. And let me just say, Melissa, in our world today, it's hard many times to determine what is true and what is false. One of the jobs that I want to do, is do my best research so that I can say, no, this one I don't think is a setup. There are a lot of things that are setups, right? I don't think, based on everything that I know, both from engineering and otherwise, I don't think this one is a setup. I think this one is a bad case of this crap happening. Now, if something were to change, I'll be the first to come out here and say, hey, Melissa, guess what I found out? But right now, I think for this one, we're okay.
Okay.
All right. Anything else, my dear friend?
No, that's it. I don't want to drive everybody crazy because I got a lot of skeptics.
I hear. Well, we'll talk. You have a great day, my friend. Bye-bye. All right, Augie, come on in, my brother.
Hey, good morning. Yeah. Well, the thing about the bridge, it's funny how they talk about those 8 guys that fell into the water, but they don't say that they were all immigrants. They were from Mexico.
Every
Guatemala,
Single one.
Salvador,
yeah.
Honduras. They spoke Spanish. When they were interviewed, they were talking Spanish. They weren't talking English. And the 2 survivors, one of them didn't go to the hospital. And it wasn't because he was probably all right. He was an immigrant, and he didn't want attention. Immigrants come here to work. And I remember a few years back, everybody would say, oh, immigrants come here to vote. No, they don't come here to vote. They came here to work. And that was a big lie that the Republicans were putting out there about these immigrants. And about the news, yeah, they put crime on there because that gets people attention. Now, I think there was one TV station decided not to put any crime stories at all. See what happened. All the stories were good stories, make you feel good. But then people stopped viewing it. They didn't want to see that. They wanted to see the crime. Yes, it gets their attention. So now the news will have a feel-good story at the end and maybe in the middle in there. But everybody focuses on the crime stories that they do. They don't notice all the other stories about things that are good that happen in the city. But and another thing about
and
it
is so dangerous. Augie, it is so dangerous because again, it makes us make bad decisions. As we look, if you take a look at the Houston Police Department, it takes. I don't quote me on this, but I think somebody called in and said it was half the budget or something of that nature. Well, whatever the case is, it's the largest one source that we collect taxes for in the city of Houston, and that is ungodly. That is so wrong. But anyway, continue, my brother.
Yeah, and at one time, the news had to be told, the truth. You couldn't tell lies or misinformation, or you'd be punished. But the 1%ers started buying up the stations. And at one time, there was a law where you couldn't buy all these stations. You could only buy like one newspaper, maybe one radio station. You couldn't buy a whole bunch of them. And then now they're buying everything else up. So and somebody had a story about, I don't know how many TV stations, like 10 or 15 stations across the country. And all 50 of them had the same script that their owner told them to say.
Actually,
Word for word.
Augie, there is a video on YouTube that somebody went ahead and got the news from, like, I don't know, 20 or 30 local stations. And you know what happened? If you read the script or you listen to it, they were all reading from the same script. Augie, but Augie, we're starting to run into time here. Give me a quick close so I can get to Robin.
Yeah. Well, there was something I saw on Facebook yesterday. It says we cannot force someone to hear a message they are not ready to receive, but we must never underestimate the power of planting seed. So just keep planting the seed there, Egberto, and keep telling people the truth, even though they may not be ready to hear it.
Thank you, brother. And what I always talk about, Augie, we have to build trust. And one of the things I want to do with this program, and that's why you hear my right wingers come in, my MAGA come in, my lefties come in, and I give everybody a platform because we want to build trust with everybody. Thank you, Augie. And let me pass it down to Howard before I go to Robin.
Oh,
Come on in, Howard.
Augie is talking about the Telecommunications Act of 1996 that lifted the ownership cap. That's what that is, and that was signed into law by Bill Clinton. Believe it or not,
Bill Clinton.
He signed it into law.
DSL guy. I mean, he was a guy believing. We used to call those guys the blue dogs, but anyway, that's where it's at. But anything else before we run to Robin?
That's it.
Let's go to Senor Robin. Come on in.
Hi, Egberto. I totally agree with Augie and the other people who have theories of why it would happen without being planned. I just want to speak to deregulation, because the problem with deregulation so that corporations can do what they want, and it's not inspected and it's not enforced. That applies to the bridge itself being approved, and it also applies to the boat, the ship, as a factor.
Now, look, first of all, I am with you 100%. When you heard Howard talk about the planes, deregulations, I mean, it's one of the reasons that he was a sardine in that plane. And I actually wanted to tie that to the economy as well. So I think you nailed it.
Thank you.
I think you nailed it.
Thank you. And thanks for what you do.
Thank you very much, Robin. Thank you so kindly. But before I go to Brian, I just want to expand a little bit on what Robin said and what Howard pointed out. Look, the reason you want regulations across the board, even when it comes to industry, is so that a particular company doesn't get a financial advantage from cutting corners, would put your life or your safety or your well-being at risk. The reason you would want to have regulations on the airlines, let's say that says a seat has to be X large enough so that one can fly in comfort to prevent blood clots in their by being so tightly together, blood clots can form in your legs. All these negative things can happen to the body when you're cramped up like a sardine for an hour or two or whatever, right? So airplane A may want to keep, let's say United may want to keep its customers comfortable, and let's say Southwest may say, we're going to try to keep the price as low as possible by packing them in and still be able to make more money than United because of what we're doing, right? If we can pack them in, at that point, United is at a mathematical disadvantage to Southwest because Southwest made the decision to make their customers more comfortable. Southwest said, we'll pack them in and charge a little bit of money. In a country where we're financially stressed, a lot of people would put themselves at risk to fly that flight where they're packed. Because there's no regulations that says, even if you're going to pay that money to be packed, we want it to be equitable across all airlines. Regulations that create what's known as an even playing field. And that's the reason for regulations. Regulations protect all corporations, all companies, all people. That's why we have them, so that we can have an even playing field. You can't get a competitive advantage. You can't make more money by screwing the people you're serving. That's what regulation solves. And that's why when Howard talks about we need to have regulations, we won't solve that packing people like sardines problem until we have regulations. We won't have safe water to drink unless we have regulations. Brian, come on in. Brother
Okay.
Brian, you're on.
Yeah, hope you have a good weekend. Who
Thank
are
you.
the Palestinian people?
Okay, go ahead.
Right.
What about the Palestinian
No.
people?
No, who are they? Where'd they come from? Who are the Palestinians?
Oh, the Palestinians are the cousins of the Jews, my friend. They all came from the same root. Abraham, the kids of Abraham.
Okay, well,
Go
that's
ahead.
the first I heard of that. But
Oh yeah, just look it up.
Yeah, I'll have to check into that because I can't understand that. I've never seen a Palestinian coin or a Palestinian temple or a Palestinian road or a boat that was built by the Palestinians. I mean, do they have a Palestinian king, or have they always been elected?
Let me just say this. Right? Before in our new times, we had Israel, we had Palestine. I think you can look into the Bible and talk about Palestines as well, right? But let's get serious about it, because we are in modern times now, right? There's something that I want that I think needs to be said, and it's very, very important. What you are talking about? Well, I'll tell you what. Beforehand, I want Howard to come in. Howard, say your point.
Oh, I was just wondering, Brian, what is your point? What you're saying you've never seen this. Why are you saying this? What is your point?
Well, if they want their own country or something of that nature, where are their history? Where their
Do they need
I'm glad
one?
you said that.
I mean, they were there
let me
first.
answer this one.
Okay. I was going to say,
Howard,
they were there first.
Let me take this one. Exactly.
Okay.
Howard is right, but let me just say this here. I want to say this because I think Americans need to be very, very, and when I say very, careful on this issue, because remember, we claim Israel has a right to return to its fatherland, its ancestral land, right? That's what many people want to say. I'm looking at it from a more modern thing, but that's what a lot of people give rights to Israel to go back to its ancestral land. Let's be careful, because as Americans, the same question you just asked, one could ask about America, which is much younger, less than 300 years, right? They could say, what's your history on this land? You don't have it. And the natives could come back and say, these are our ancestral lands, and we want it back, and we should be able to move back and take it. Folks, be very, very careful, because every time you're pointing a finger, Brian, there are four of them pointing back. We as Americans, we ought to be very, very careful when we start talking about people returning to their ancestral lands, because we don't have the right history to really be talking about that. Go ahead, Brian, before we go. Give me your last words.
So are they Arabic religion or Jewish religion?
They are. I mean, Palestine. There were two. The religion split, right, between Muhammad and I mean, there's a split in religion four ways, right? But that's another subject. But again, what does that matter, as Howard say, when you look at American history? Put in the same lens that you're putting out there. Let's put it on American history.
No, okay.
You see my point?
Now, how many?
Wait. I'm asking you, my brother. Do you see my point? If you're willing to ask those questions of Palestinians, shouldn't you ask those questions of Americans?
Okay. Here's some history. How many times is Jerusalem mentioned in the Quran? And I've already read the
It's
Quran,
mentioned.
by the way.
Brian, you didn't answer my question. I answered yours. You didn't answer my question. Do you think Americans need to answer that same question as well?
No, that's a different question.
Why
that's
not?
A different subject.
No, it's not.
That's a different subject.
It's not.
The Quran is
It's not.
mentioned. Excuse me. Jerusalem is mentioned in the Quran vaguely, very vaguely, 4 times. Jerusalem is mentioned in the Bible 700 times. So you want to go back
What's
to
the
your
point?
ancestral root? What I just answered your ancestral root question. Okay.
All right, I tell you, Brian, we won't have to finish this another time. Howard, because of the time. Howard, give me a closer.
That's it. Have a good weekend.
Jack?
He's got nothing. He's good.
Okay, anyway, folks, thank you so kindly, everybody, for listening. Go to politicsandright.com/newsletter for what we hadn't covered, 2 other subjects. My name is Egberto Willis. This is Politics and Right, and you guys know how I end this baby. I am what? Out. We spend a lot of time deconstructing the news, trying to parse it into a form that everybody can understand. We try to find those little nitpicks where it flies above the fray, etc. If you really like these videos that we do, I want to ask a big favor. Please go ahead. Number 1, subscribe to our channel, and number 2, please join if you can. Thank you so kindly for watching. Keep watching. Please remember to share. We must populate the entire internet with our progressive message, a message that we know is what most Americans say that they want. So help us, please join.